The scissors were cold in my hand. $20,000 worth of white silk, Vera Wang, custom fitted, every seam perfect. And I was cutting it apart. Slowly, deliberately, one piece at a time. From the living room, the television was on. The anchor's voice drifted through the door. The engagement of Vance family heiress Elena Vance and rising executive Alex Sterling has been called off. I kept cutting. My name is Elena Vance. For 34 years, I did everything right. I built a career restoring masterpieces, Rembrandt, Vermeer, paintings so fragile that museums trusted only my hands to bring them back to life. I was steady. I was precise. I was proud of that. But in my family, there was another verdict. I was the boring one. That was never said out loud. Not directly. It didn't need to be. You could feel it every holiday dinner, every family gathering. My cousin Sienna would walk into a room and the air itself seemed to shift. Loud, magnetic, impossible to ignore. Even after the Hollywood scandal that destroyed her career, even after she'd burned through every bridge she had, especially after that, she was still the star. I was just Elena, the one with the old paintings. I had made peace with that, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks before my engagement party. I wasn't looking for anything. I was simply walking past my father's study, Harrison Vance, patriarch, chairman, the man I had loved without question my entire life. And his voice stopped me cold. He was on the phone, and he was closing a deal, $2 million, a seat on the board of directors, all of it going to Alex Sterling, my Alex, with one single condition attached. Leave Elena. Marry Sienna instead. I stood in that hallway and I did not breathe. Then I heard the words that I will carry in my chest until the day I die. My father said, calm, almost bored, Elena is too ordinary. She belongs with her old paintings. Sienna is the one with the star power this family needs. Too ordinary. 34 years. And that was his final answer. Here's what my father miscalculated. He assumed I would fall apart. He assumed I would cry, confront, collapse, make a scene, and then disappear quietly, the way ordinary women do in the stories men like him tell themselves. Instead, I went back to my room. I sat down at my desk, and I opened my laptop. Every bank transfer, every email, every timestamp. I pulled every thread of that transaction, and I saved it somewhere he would never find. Then, the night before our engagement party, the night the Vance family was expecting champagne and applause, I released a carefully crafted bankruptcy filing. Just convincing enough, just timed right. By morning, Vance Group stock had fallen 14%. The phones were ringing off the hook. Investors were panicking. And I was already on a plane. No confrontation, no tears, no goodbye. Gone. My father thought ordinary meant harmless. He forgot something important. The woman who spent her career saving broken masterpieces, she knows exactly how much damage looks like nothing on the surface. And she knows how to be very patient. 2 years later, I came back. Different name, different city, different everything. And I came back with a plan that had been running, quietly, invisibly, the entire time they thought I'd disappeared. Chicago in January is brutal. The wind off Lake Michigan cuts right through you. Doesn't matter how thick your coat is, doesn't matter how tough you think you are. It finds the gaps. It gets inside. I loved it. After 2 years of Manhattan's polished perfection, I needed something honest. Something that didn't pretend. Chicago didn't pretend. It just hit you, and then it waited to see what you'd do next. I fit right in. I didn't arrive as Elena Vance. Elena Vance was a woman who trusted the wrong people. Elena Vance restored other people's masterpieces, while her own life fell apart in the background. Elena Vance stood in a marble bathroom and cut up a wedding dress, while her father sold her like a line item on a balance sheet. I arrived as Vera. No last name, no backstory, just a reputation that built itself quietly and quickly in the circles where it mattered most. My specialty? Art fraud. Not committing it, exposing it. In the world of the ultra-wealthy, fake paintings are everywhere. A Monet that isn't quite a Monet. A sculpture with paperwork that doesn't survive scrutiny. These people couldn't call the police. The scandal would be worse than the loss. They needed someone discreet, someone brilliant, someone who would walk in, identify the forgery, trace the forger, and make the whole ugly problem disappear. That someone was me, and I was very good at it. I worked 20 hours a day, not because I had to, because the work kept the silence from getting too loud. In the silence, I thought about my father's voice. Too ordinary. In the silence, I thought about Alex, how he had held my hand at the Met Gala, looked at me across candlelit restaurant tables, told me I was the only woman he'd ever loved, and then quietly accepted $2 million to replace me with someone more useful. So I worked. I turned the anger into fuel, and I burned everything in my path. Within 18 months, I had clients on 3 continents, a penthouse in River North, a name, Vera, that made forgers nervous and collectors relieved. I had become, without quite planning it, exactly what my father always wanted for his family. Powerful, untouchable, feared in the right rooms. He just didn't know it was me. Then, one morning, over coffee, I made a mistake. I searched their names. I told myself it was idle curiosity. I told myself I was over it. But the truth is, some wounds don't close. They just go quiet. And when you press them, they open right back up. Sienna and Alex had married 6 months after I disappeared. The society pages had been breathless about it. The glamorous redemption of Elena Vance, the handsome young executive by her side. The Vance family looking polished and powerful as ever. But that was then. What I found that morning was something different. Sienna had been photographed leaving a rehabilitation facility in Connecticut. Twice in 1 year. Alex had been quietly removed from 2 board committees. Demoted. Humiliated. Reduced to a figurehead my father trotted out for press appearances and then ignored. The marriage that was supposed to save everyone had become something none of them could escape. They had built a beautiful cage, and now they were all locked inside it together. I sat with that information for a long time. Then I opened an anonymous account, completely untraceable, even to me, and I began feeding small, precise pieces of information to the right journalists. Not lies. I never needed lies. The truth was devastating enough. A hint here about the state of the marriage. A source there confirming Sienna's struggles. A quiet suggestion that the Vance family's golden image had some serious cracks running through it. TMZ picked it up first, then Page 6, Then the financial press started asking questions about the company. My father's carefully constructed portrait of the perfect family began, slowly and beautifully, to fall apart. I wasn't done, not even close. Because here's the thing about restoring a damaged painting. You don't rush it. You work in layers. You let each one dry completely before you add the next. The final image takes time, but when it's finished, everyone can see exactly what it is. The Hamptons' wedding was 8 months away, and I had already been planning my entrance for 2 years. Julian called me on a Wednesday morning. My brother, the only Vance who had ever looked at me and seen a person instead of a chess piece. Elena? His voice was careful, measured, the way it always got when he was about to say something he knew I wouldn't like. I'm getting married. Hamptons, August 15th. And I need you there. I set down my coffee. Does Father know you're calling me? Silence. That was my answer. Julian, she's wonderful. Her name is Claire, and I am not getting married without my sister in that room. I looked out at the Chicago skyline. Gray sky, silver lake, the city going about its business 20 floors below. I'll be there, I said, but I won't be coming alone. His name was Marcus Thorne, 47 years old, self-made, tech infrastructure, the unglamorous kind that nobody talks about at dinner parties, but that every bank, every hospital, every government on Earth quietly depends on. His net worth made my father look like a man counting change in a parking lot. Marcus and I had met 18 months earlier over a disputed Basquiat. He'd been defrauded. I'd recovered the piece and identified the forger. Afterward, he'd taken me to dinner to say thank you, and we'd talked for 4 hours without noticing the restaurant had emptied around us. We weren't romantic. We were something rarer. 2 people who understood each other completely and asked nothing in return. When I explained what I needed, he didn't hesitate for a second. Tell me what to wear, he said. The Hamptons in August is its own particular theater. Old money and new money pretending they don't notice each other. Linen suits, inherited jewelry. The kind of casual elegance that takes enormous effort to achieve, and even more effort to maintain. Everyone watching everyone else from behind very expensive sunglasses. I had dressed with surgical precision. Ivory column gown. Simple, devastating. The kind of dress that doesn't ask for attention. It simply makes everything around it look slightly underdressed. My hair was up. 1 piece of jewelry, a single emerald pendant that had belonged to my grandmother. The one family heirloom my father had never managed to take from me. Marcus offered me his arm at the entrance, and we walked in. I felt the room change before I saw a single face. That shift in the air. The conversations that falter mid-sentence. The heads that turn without meaning to. I had spent 34 years being invisible in rooms like this one. I knew exactly what invisibility felt like. This was its opposite. I spotted my father first. Harrison Vance, 63 years old. The same iron posture, the same calculated smile he wore like a second skin. He was mid-conversation with 2 men I recognized from the company's board. He saw me. The smile didn't disappear. It just froze. Like a clock that had stopped ticking but hadn't fallen off the wall yet. Then his eyes moved to Marcus, and I watched him do the math. Sienna was standing near the bar. 2 years had not been kind. She was still beautiful. That bone structure didn't go anywhere, but the wattage was gone. the thing that used to make her magnetic, that electric certainty that the room belonged to her, it had burned out somewhere along the way. She looked like a woman wearing her own ghost. She saw me and went completely still. I smiled. Warm, genuine. The smile of a woman who has absolutely nothing left to prove. That, I had learned, is the most terrifying thing you can show someone who was counting on you to be broken. Dinner was served at 8. I had arranged for the painting to be delivered that afternoon, held at the venue, unwrapped only when I gave the word. Between the first and second course, I stood, crossed the room, and set the wrapped canvas in front of my father. "A gift," I said quietly, "for the occasion." He looked at me. Something moved behind his eyes. Caution, calculation, the faintest trace of something that might have been guilt if he were capable of it. He unwrapped it slowly. The table went silent. It was a restoration, my own work, flawless, technically. A 19th century oil painting depicting a solitary figure hunched over a wooden table. 30 silver coins scattered across the surface, shadows pressing in from every edge. Every person in that room with any education at all recognized it immediately. Judas, counting his coins. My father's face drained of color so completely and so fast that the man beside him actually reached out a hand, thinking he might faint. He didn't faint. He just sat there, holding the painting, unable to say a single word. Because what could he possibly say? The room was already whispering. And Marcus Thorne, whose name alone made board members straighten their posture, was seated beside me, entirely relaxed, swirling his wine like a man watching a very satisfying film. My father was untouchable for 30 years. He built that carefully, controlled every narrative, managed every image. But there is one thing money cannot buy and power cannot manufacture: a clean conscience. And in that room, surrounded by everyone whose opinion he had spent a lifetime courting, his mask had just cracked, right on schedule. The garden was Julian's idea. After dinner, the estate opened its back terrace, lanterns strung between old oak trees, the sound of the ocean somewhere beyond the hedgerows, the kind of summer evening that makes people lower their guard and say things they shouldn't. I had counted on exactly that. I slipped away from the reception around 9:30, not obviously. I simply set down my champagne, excused myself from a conversation about contemporary sculpture, and walked toward the rose garden at the far edge of the property. Tucked underneath my emerald pendant, pressed flat against my collarbone, was a microphone the size of a shirt button. I had been wearing it since noon. He found me in 11 minutes. I had calculated between 8 and 15, so 11 was almost elegant. Alex Sterling, 38 years old now, still handsome in the way that had once made my heart move. The jaw, the shoulders, the practiced ease of a man who had always been rewarded for how he looked before anyone bothered to check what was underneath. But something had changed. The ease was gone. In its place was something rawer, desperate almost. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Just the ocean in the distance, the faint sound of a string quartet drifting from the terrace. "You look incredible," he said finally. "I know," I said. That threw him. He'd expected something softer, an opening he could work with. He tried again. "Elena, I need you to understand what happened. Your father, he didn't give me a choice. the money, the board seat, all of it. It was constructed so that I couldn't. Alex. My voice was calm, almost gentle. You had a choice. You made it in about 48 hours. He flinched. Good. Then he took a step closer. I never stopped thinking about you. Not once. What Sienna and I have, it's not real. It's never been real. It's a performance your father directs and we execute. And every single day I wake up inside that marriage and I think about what I threw away. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. Just for a moment. Tell me what I threw away, I said quietly. Say it out loud. And he did. Every word of it. The phone call with my father, the negotiation, the exact figure, the conditions, the board seat, how he'd rationalized it to himself, told himself I'd be fine, told himself I was strong enough, told himself it was just business. He said all of it. Then he leaned in, and I stepped back. Clean, decisive. Don't, I said. His face shifted. Confusion first, then something uglier. Elena. We're done here. I walked back through the rose garden, up the terrace steps, and directly to the DJ booth, where 2 hours earlier I had introduced myself to a very professional young man named Derek and explained exactly what I needed him to do at exactly 9:54. It was 9:53. I nodded at Derek. He nodded back. The string quartet was between songs, that brief, elegant silence that falls over a reception when everyone is refilling glasses and shifting in their seats, and the evening feels like it could go on forever, soft and golden and perfect. Then the speakers came alive. Alex's voice filled the entire tent. The phone call with your father, the exact figure, the board seat. I told myself it was just business. Every syllable, crystal clear. The room didn't erupt. That's what people get wrong about moments like this. They expect screaming and chaos immediately. What actually happened was something far more devastating. Complete silence. 40 people, frozen. Champagne glasses stopped halfway to lips. The board members my father had been charming all evening slowly turned to look at him. Harrison Vance sat perfectly still. A man who had survived decades of corporate warfare, who had outmaneuvered rivals half his age, who had never once, in my memory, lost his composure in public. He had no composure left. It had simply left his body. Sienna moved first. She crossed that room so fast I barely tracked it, and she hit Alex with an open hand, the crack of it sharp and final above the silence. Then again, words coming out of her in a torrent. 2 years of a suffocating marriage compressed into 30 seconds of pure unraveling. Then the board members started talking to each other. Then to their phones. Then 2 officers appeared at the entrance. Because 8 months ago, I had filed every document, every transfer record, every piece of evidence about my father's tax arrangements with the appropriate federal authorities. I had simply asked them, very politely, to wait until August 15th. They had been very accommodating. My father looked across that ruined room and found my face. I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I didn't perform anything at all. I just looked at him. Steady, quiet. The way you look at a painting you've studied for so long that you've memorized every crack in the surface. Then Julian appeared beside me, put his hand on my arm. You okay? He said. I thought about it, honestly. Yes, I said. I really am. A year passes faster than you'd think when you finally stop waiting for something. For 2 years in Chicago, every morning had carried a low hum of anticipation underneath it, a tightness in the chest, a sense of something unfinished. I hadn't even noticed it until the morning it was gone. I woke up in my Toronto penthouse on a Tuesday in September, made coffee, watched the sun come up over Lake Ontario, and realized my hands weren't clenched anymore. Just like that. Unclenched. The final tallies, for anyone keeping score. Harrison Vance, federal tax evasion, misappropriation of corporate funds, 2 additional charges that emerged once investigators started actually looking. 18 months, minimum security. The company was restructured under court supervision, his name removed from the lobby of the building he'd spent 30 years making sure bore it prominently. Alex Sterling. No criminal charges, which is its own kind of punishment. When you're not important enough to prosecute, the law simply looks through you. Last I heard, he was working at a bar in Queens. Not managing it, working it. Tuesday through Saturday. Tips appreciated. Sienna completed her 3rd stay in rehabilitation and, by all accounts, was doing the genuine work of putting herself back together. That one I followed with something closer to hope than satisfaction. She had been a weapon my father aimed at me. She was also a person who had been ground up by this same machinery. Those 2 things were both true. My phone buzzed on a quiet October evening. A message. From a prison facility in upstate New York. I was wrong about you. You were always the strongest one. I read it twice. Then I typed back, "Thank you for the $2 million, Dad. I used it to short sell your company stock 3 years ago. With compounding returns and 2 additional positions I took 18 months later, it became $200 million. I hope the food is tolerable. Behave yourself and they might let you use the library." I sent it. Set the phone face down on the table. Then I picked up my coffee and went back to watching the lake. Here's the thing nobody tells you about money. And I mean real money. Not the kind you inherit and spend, but the kind you build with intention. It's not actually about the number. My father accumulated wealth for 70 years, and it made him paranoid, transactional, willing to sell his own daughter to protect an image. The money didn't corrupt him. It just gave his worst instincts a very large stage to perform on. What I learned, the hard way, the only way that actually sticks, is that money is just stored time. Every dollar is an hour you worked, a decision you made, a risk you calculated. When you understand it that way, you stop spending it carelessly. You stop letting other people spend it for you. You start asking, what am I actually exchanging here, and is it worth it? I took $2 million that were meant to erase me. I was patient. I was precise. I let time do what time does when you point it in the right direction. 200 million. Not because I'm extraordinary, because I paid attention. I controlled my emotions when every instinct screamed at me to act, and I never, not once, let anger make my financial decisions. Anger is useful fuel. Terrible accountant. Julian got married that August evening, despite everything. Claire was exactly as wonderful as he'd promised. They danced their first dance while federal officers were still taking statements in the parking lot, which is either terrible timing or a perfect metaphor for how life actually works. I danced too. Late in the evening, shoes off, on the grass. Not for anyone watching, just because I wanted to. My name is Elena Vance. I restore broken things for a living. I always have. Turns out, the most important restoration I ever did wasn't a Vermeer or a Rembrandt. It was quieter than that. Less dramatic than a Hamptons reception, or a prison sentence, or $200 million in a brokerage account. It was just a woman standing in her own life with unclenched hands. And that was more than enough.